Hi, I'm Kat Bolstead, and I'm going to walk you through the first lecture module for constructing your EP1, the Written Inquiry Plan. This lecture module will handle the formatting of EP1 and also the Section A, the first part of the Written Inquiry Plan. The goal of this assessment is to show us the first part of your journey in developing your inquiry question and your topic. We want to see how your topic has developed and evolved into not just a general topic, but a strong question, using the indicators of strong questions that we've discussed in the lecture modules and in the tutorials. We want to see how you've started your information search. So the processes of developing your question and beginning your information search will be complementary, and probably as you've started to think of a topic, you will have done some information searching, which will have led you to further refine your topic and your question. So those two parts of the process are a little bit cyclical. We want to see evidence of how those have unfolded, and we also want to see the first indications of how you're checking your sources for credibility. So we've given you some means to show us how you're assessing whether the sources you find are credible or not, and we want to see some first evidence of how you're applying that to the sources that you choose to provide information to answer the question that you're developing. So in order to begin this assignment, you need to download the template from AUT Online. That's available under the EP1 folder. It's a Word document, and the format of this assessment when you turn it in is this template filled in. EP1 is not an essay. It is this template with the questions in the template still in place and your answers typed in the boxes below the questions. So you need to have this template, you need to have it saved on your computer, and then you need to fill it in with the information specifically about your topic and your searches. So you'll answer the questions provided, you'll fill in the tables, you'll save that as a final version, and you will upload that to us. And that completed template is what we mark for your EP1 assignment. As you work on the template, please make sure that you save frequently as you're working. You don't want to have a power outage or walk away and find that your cat has come back and walked across the keyboard and deleted everything that you wrote and that was your only copy. So it's quite a good idea to save frequently as you work. You might like to save after every sentence if you think, well, whatever happens, I don't want to type that sentence again. It's a good idea to save your drafts labeled as drafts, so you know what your last modified version was and that this is still a draft version. When your assessment is finally ready to submit, then you want to save it as your final version, labeled in such a way that you can't possibly accidentally upload your draft. Uploading a draft version of your assessment in place of the final is no excuse for having a different version turned in for marking later. So if you upload the draft, your draft will be marked. There is no option to then replace the draft with the final version when you realize you put in the wrong version. So please be sure you label your final version clearly for yourself so that that is the version you upload. It's also very important that you save multiple copies of it as backups. Having lost your only existing copy of your final is not a valid excuse for extension or for alternate consideration of your grade. So you may choose to email it to yourself, you might like to upload it to Google Docs, you might like to save it on a flash drive. However you want to ensure that you have at least two copies of your final version of your assignment, please do that to safeguard yourself. AUT does not accept the excuse, my laptop had my only copy and it was stolen, as the means for extension. Don't put yourself in that position. When you've saved and labeled the final version of your assignment, you're going to submit it to Turnitin. And we will walk you through the process of submitting it to Turnitin in your tutorials. So now we'll show you a little bit of what the template looks like if you haven't seen it yet. This is the title page. It's got fields for you to enter your own inquiry question, to enter the date and your own name, and you need to type over those fields. Please don't turn in a final version of your EP1 template that still says student name on the title page. Please make sure you put in your own information. And then the first page of the template itself looks like this. So this lecture module is going to talk about Section A, which you can see here. It has two main questions, and you're expected to answer these in formal academic writing to give us an introduction to your topic. So we'll walk through those two questions specifically. This background section is aiming to introduce the reader to your inquiry question by telling the reader all the background information that they need to know about this topic in order to understand your question and the importance of the question. So this is your chance to introduce the wider scope of the topic, to talk about how you've narrowed it down to your particular question, and to explain any specialist terms if you have them. So remember that you should consider your reader to be an educated person, but not a specialist on this particular topic. So you will need to define any specialist terminology you're using, any acronyms you plan to use throughout your assessments. Those need to be defined in this section. And if you're exploring a topic that has a lot of specialist terminology, be aware that defining those terms might eat up a fair amount of your word count in this section. So think really carefully about what specialist terms you really need to include, because you will lose a little bit of space in defining those for your reader. The main goal of this section is to give the reader a sense of why it's important to investigate this topic. So why is it worth your time to look into this topic, to answer this question, and why is it worth the reader's time to understand the topic and find out the answer to your question. So in the first question of section A, which is what is your inquiry question about, if you're having trouble thinking about how to structure the information in this section, some questions that you might like to ask yourself and then answer in the information here would be, what is the focus? What exactly is the topic that you're researching? Is it a phenomenon? Is it a medical condition? Is it a societal issue? What is the main subject of your question? Whom does it affect? Is it something that affects children? Does it affect senior citizens? Is it widespread throughout society? Maybe 1 in 5 people are affected by it, or perhaps a high percentage of the population over the age of 60. What would be the demographic that's affected by the issue that you're exploring? And what kinds of factors can lead to it? Is it a health condition that develops as a result of lifestyle choices, or are there genetic factors perhaps, or environmental factors that contribute strongly to this particular phenomenon? What is the history of the topic? Is it something that's been researched for a long period of time, perhaps since the early 20th century, and only recently maybe the understanding around it has developed significantly, or is it a very new topic that we're only beginning to understand? And how does it happen? Is it affected by, as we mentioned before, perhaps environmental factors? Does it develop as a result of things that a person is exposed to in childhood? How does your issue come about? Why is it a question that needs answering? So for the why is it important question, some sub-questions you might like to answer in this section if you're having trouble thinking about how to structure it might be, what is the risk to society or to an individual if we don't know the answer to this question? How might it affect not only the individuals directly impacted by it, but anyone around them? How might it affect their family members? Could it affect society in a particular way? This question, this overall question of why is it important, is your chance to tell the reader really why it's worth your time and the reader's time to look into this topic. So what is it that makes this an important issue to study? And you might also consider why it's important for individuals studying your particular pathway or going into your particular career choice. Does it directly affect people who work in the industry of oral health? Is it very important for marine biologists or food scientists? Is it really important for coaches? Why might this topic be important in your particular pathway? When you're answering the questions in this section and thinking about why it might be important, for example, for people in your pathway, you need to avoid writing in the first person. So you don't want to say, this is important because my grandmother has it. You might like to say, this is important because it affects 75% of people over the age of 55. You need to make it relevant to the wider society. And you also don't want to say, I'm studying paramedicine and it's important for paramedics because. You might just say, this issue is particularly relevant to paramedics and students of paramedicine because. So without putting those personal reasons in there. So some formatting considerations for section A. You need to leave the typed questions where they are. Don't delete them as you write your answers. So we can see clearly what the structure is of these two sections. Whether you choose to have 2 paragraphs for the first question and 1 paragraph for the second, or vice versa, or an equal amount of information in both sections will depend very much on the topic that you're researching specifically. And it doesn't really matter to us if you have more information in one section or less information in the other. You have about 300 to 400 words in total for this whole section, so across both questions, and it's up to you how you want to distribute those words. You need to use formal academic writing, so you need to use formal English, you need to define your terms. We'd like to see your paragraphs have appropriate paragraph structure with topic sentences and examples, as we've been discussing in the lectures and tutorials. Your document should be formatted with APA document formatting following the guidelines in your paper booklet. So you need to use a particular font, particular size of font. You do not need to double space. In fact, double spacing this template will make it incredibly long. Other than that, it should follow the basic format of a document that we're planning to have you use throughout this semester. So those are the main considerations for putting together Section A of your EP1, and now we'll move on to discussing Section B.